Hi everyone, welcome to Softvision Suite's monthly webinar. My name is Megan Morris. I'm one of the product consultants on our team. I want to start off just by thanking you all for spending the time to be with us today for this month's webinar. We will be discussing how to best manage and adapt to your in-season demand during these unprecedented times. Okay. So a quick introduction to our merchandising consulting team. We are the ones that run these monthly webinars for you and are assigned to each of you to help support you with the system and best practices. Please feel free to reach out to us directly if you ever need any particular help with anything, as well as if you have any suggestions for future webinar topics. And a reminder here, we will have everybody on mute to reduce any background noise. So if you would like to ask us questions or interact with us throughout the session, we'd love to hear from you. Just use the Q&A icon located at the bottom of your screen, and we'll address those throughout. A recording of this webinar will be made available on our support site under the educational webinars section. And we will also be able to access our past webinars on our Cognizant Softvision YouTube channel. And as we mentioned last month, we are in the process of converting to our new Cognizant YouTube site. And as soon as we have those details, we will be sharing that with you so you can access the future webinars. All right, so moving on to our agenda for today. We're going to begin with discussing the impact that COVID has had to our retail business and our forecast, and then discuss how we can best determine and react to these changes that we see within the system, and what's the best course of action to take with updating the forecast. All right, so to start off here with just laying out the landscape here and the impact to business. So we continue to see huge effects to the retail business due to the novel COVID-19 pandemic. Entire countries remain under quarantine orders, and our consumers continue to practice social distancing and really avoiding human interaction as much as possible. So it has left many retailers scrambling to adapt to this new normal. A lot of us have dealt with the store closures or office closures for at least 3 to 6 months now, some still ongoing, and just that overall uncertainty that the consumer has with their spending and their shift to online shopping. So as our situation evolves here and as we approach the holiday season, we thought it would be useful to review how to best manage and adapt to these demand variations within our tool set today. Okay. Along with some of the business impacts that we've seen also come the delivery delays that many of us are experiencing with our supply chain. Preparation and open communication with your vendors continues to be imperative during this time so that you can properly plan for disruptions that will continue to occur across your suppliers or their various geographies. It's important that you continue to regularly examine any risks that you have with some strategic foresight so that you can quickly adapt to the changes for the supply chain. Some of the recommendations that we recommend here is when it comes to your key products or the products that you are offering all year round, make sure that you do have multiple suppliers that can help fulfill your needs so that you are not just dependent on one particular supplier if anything were to arise. And then also just making sure that communication is happening regularly with those big key suppliers. So discussing and sharing how your sales are and any kind of short-term demand changes that are occurring at a weekly level or even daily, depending on the products that you're dealing with, is really going to help make a difference and allow you to assess your risks together and create a contingency plan. So the overall takeaway here is just making sure that you have a good partnership with that vendor so that your delivery processes and everything are meeting your consumer demand as the supply chain or other challenges continue to arise here. Okay. So when it comes to the changes that we've seen with our forecasts, we continue to see demand patterns changing, and this is really occurring across various countries and regions by product type. The best practice that we are recommending here is to continue to regularly review and react to your short-term forecasts at that lower category and subcategory level. So making sure that you're regularly looking at this daily or weekly so that you can spot and react to any changes based off of the current environment and how things may have shifted. What we are seeing here in the areas trending up, no surprise here, it continues to be those essential goods, your food and grocery, household items, personal care, anything that is helping them to stay safe and healthy. And then the decrease areas that continue to trend down here are your non-essential goods, your travel, your formal, and your business, whereas the consumers begin to reassess how their spending habits in the categories that are really relevant to them in this new normal.
Yeah, Megan, it'll be interesting to see for this holiday season how giftware sells, whether people are going to be buying a lot of gifts or not. And the feedback we got is it seems like people will be buying gifts for the holiday season, mostly to cheer everyone up during COVID. So it remains to be seen, but I think a lot of companies are planning for at least some of the giftware to do well.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, we'll wait and see.
With that, I'll pass it over to Janine to talk about forecast variance or product variance.
Thank you, Megan. So one of the tools that we want to reinforce in being able to use to help you work through these variances that you're seeing from the pandemic, and that's the product variance screen. We typically recommend this screen when you're first have an offer that's just launched, that you can take a look at the outliers really quickly by, by sorting if you want to look at your products that are over forecasted or over projecting based on your forecast. And on the flip side, you can see the ones that are the real slow performers. But this can be used now as well. So this screen has a lot going on. As any screen we have, you can come in and customize the flow of the columns. We have lots of groupable columns in here. So when Megan's talking about those categories that are trending up and then the ones that are trending down, you can come in here and group by those categories or vendors specifically to isolate that subset that you want to address. This particular screen, you can have, and most of you do, have a script that runs that pre-populates this report or this screen for you. And Stuart will show you how to launch directly from the dashboard to get to this. It's also in the menu listing and forecasting module. So there's what we call submit jobs. So you'll see that that's also an icon available on the ribbon. So the script probably has predetermined amounts, which is at minimum % complete of the offer to a max % complete of the offer, all the products that fall in between that range, show me what they are, and then you also have a value for the % variance. So that % variance is from your original forecast to what the system is projecting. So as I said, you have that script, it populates for you. You can come in here at any time though and click on that submit job and change those variables and those settings to give a deeper dive into it. So if you wanted to see products that are, between 2% and 40% complete, that have a variance of 50%, ways that you can grab and isolate products that you need to react to.
And Janine, that's a one-time change. In other words, if you want to submit job and make a change, the script will still run the next day. So it'll still run and keep whatever was there in those settings.
Exactly. Yes. Thanks for calling that out. Absolutely. So if you go to the next screen for me, Stuart. So here's an example of where I've gone in, I've streamlined my columns, and I've grouped by a category that I want to focus on. And what I'm looking for are, give me, the top items where the projected value is just outrunning where I originally forecasted. because these obviously going to potentially get in trouble if I don't have enough on order. I'll need to look at not only the forecast for this particular offer that I've highlighted, I might need to readdress future offers as well. So this is a great launching point. So once I have identified the grouping and the sorting that I'm trying to isolate, I can then double click on that very first item, and it's going to launch me right into product level forecasting. So if you see a theme, what I'm doing here is we want to start reevaluating those forecasts. So you've got all of that coming up. So if you go to the next screen for me. Please.
So under units is where you're under forecasted, and then you could sort, right? And then you could sort on over units to see where your forecasts are too high.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a simple like click on the top of the column and it sorts high low, and it just depends on which column you're wanting to do. So this very first example here, I've got a forecast of 430 units, but the system's now projecting 758. So for me, that's quite a jump. So it's saying I'm under forecasted like 42% or something. So when I launch into product level forecasting, the offer is a lighter shade of gray, so it calls it out immediately on the screen. And again, you'll see those numbers that were on that product variance screen, which is the 430 forecast and the 758 projected units. So I'm going to want to come in here and do my analysis and figure out, I need to boost this forecast. What future offers do I need to particularly alter? And take a look at my mix percents as well. So you're going to want to make all that analysis, contact your vendor, see if we can get orders pulled in faster or making sure I'm getting more on order. And I would just like to remind people that when you connect in from the product variance report, or when you are working a hot list, but they're in here in the product level forecasting screen, or whether in your materials planning screen, up on the top ribbon, we have those next or done in next. So after I've done whatever I need to with this particular product, I can simply click next, and it's good for me. So you're not bouncing back and forth. So while I'm in product level forecasting, other data points that I want to take a look at, right, is going to be our history forecast graph. We like to call this out as a great reminder.
One thing before you go on to the
Sure.
graph is, we do want to make a change at this point, right? Because this is going to flow to materials planning before we do what's called auto project.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Right. Oh, I would definitely want, in this particular scenario where I'm at, 20% complete in my offer.
Right. Yeah.
Absolutely. This number is what I would consider a statistically sound number, and I would most definitely want to raise that forecast.
Right. So this offer at 75%, we're not changing those, because at this point, and that's in marketing offer setup, the system is using the projection. You don't have to go in and make the change. So
Correct.
Up to a certain point, but this early, we usually change it, right?
Right. Yes. And that's a good call out. You want to make sure that you're aware of when your offers go into auto project. Some clients will have, a uniform value. Every offer at 30% complete goes into auto project. There are some clients that it will vary depending on the timing of the year or the type of offer that they have. Some might want the offer to go into auto project at a much sooner time because they have a very quick curve to their book. Right. For example, if you've got a month-long offer and by day 9 you're pretty well done, your auto project is going to be a much smaller number. Then there are others that want it 40% complete. So yeah, it's a good call out to make sure you're aware of when your offers go into auto project. So the history forecast graph gives you a really good visual of, what you did historically, where you're forecasted, what your on hands are. You can look at year over year. And one of the reasons why I'm just calling this one back out is because within the last few days, I've had several conversations. What are we going to do about March, April, and May next year? right? So we're going into the fall holiday season, which is a big quarter for the majority of our customers. A lot of your business happens now. And we're not really coming out of the pandemic yet, but we're trying to find a new normal. So we're kind of trying to figure out how this is going to happen, but the conversations are really starting to bubble about what do we do about next year. So this will be a very good place to come to take a look. So when you're thinking, as you start getting into this fall season, you're already planning next year, right? So we want to start having those conversations early to say, where do we think March, April, and May are going to be? They're certainly not going to be like this March, April, and May. Is it somewhere in between? Or do we just ignore 2020 and look at 2019 and use that as our gauge for 2021? So again, a great place for you to come to take a look at that information.
And then it's nice that we see the inventory, because this is like the only place in forecasting we could actually see that inventory position, which does have an impact on the forecasts and sales. So
exactly,
it's good to see both.
Mm-hmm. All right, so revising forecasts, I want to just call out the tools that are truly going to help you get there. We've just reviewed the product variance. We've got all of our hot lists, depending, on how you're managing your product load, vendor product SKU hot list. If you're a suggested purchase order customer, there's suggested requisition hot lists. If you're a multi-echelon transfer hot list. So those are really your exception reporting tools and your go-tos, and they should be. Multi and single offer forecast screen. I'm going to touch on that in a moment, but this is a great way to start managing those changes that you have to do. If you're a Venture 21 customer, product variance is a great tool if you are linking product to subcategories or other products for their history to base your forecast on. When you start getting variances in that linking, you have the ability to accept those variances and get that applied towards your forecast. So it's a great, quick way to do that. And then Stuart will touch on this a bit more in detail, but we do have Venture 21 forecast variance reports, which are week comparisons, and there's quite a handful of them, but you can look at the last 2 weeks and the next 2 weeks, or the last 8 weeks and the next 8 weeks in managing your forecasts and your purchasing. So I will reiterate what Megan said quite a few times. We want you to be reviewing your business weekly and daily. Those forecasts, you need to be, it's ever changing. So you have to be aware of those changes. Now, whether you can, move a mountain, that we'll see, but you want to at least make sure you've got the latest and greatest information. Communicating both internally and externally is critical. We had a previous webinar all about your vendor management. So making how to manage your suppliers and your partners internally and externally, and you need to be able to lean on these for success. This is all new to everyone. So, the more we are communicating and trying to work together to meet that customer need is going to be that success for us. So I mentioned that multi-offer forecast screen. So this was my go-to screen when I was a user in the application. It's the best place to go when you have to make an adjustment to performance of an offer. So when I do any budget type of revision, I'm updating my macro and offer setup, and then I'm coming immediately to this particular screen. What's great about this particular screen is you can look at up to 3 offers or up to 3 different versions of offers. So in this example that I have here, I have a work version, an actual version, and my initial forecast version. So if you are a client that goes in and takes various snapshots during the life of an offer, those versions are obviously available to you for reporting, or you can take a look in this screen. So In here, it starts at the top offer level and displays my categories. So if I'm going to make an overall revenue change, I can make it here at the top level and then have it roll all the way down. All right. Just to call out, at the bottom of the screen, there's probably 8 or 9 different tabs of various metrics. So if there is a metric that you prefer to use internally, you'll be able to choose that as to what you're adjusting. I always talked in dollars. So for me, I always go to the revenue tab. But what this also shows you is the percent of total business that your categories are doing in these various versions of the offers. So another activity, which is nice, is my initial breakout, I'm showing getting organized was 15.1%. My actual and my work version are showing a slightly higher breakout. And as I go through, I see that there is some definite shifts in how my categories are performing. So if I want to adjust my current world and move it to where my customer is trending my business, I'm going to want to apply those weights to my work version so that I can move those monies around to where I need it to be, because the customer is buying differently than we originally planned.
Well, you could also blend it, right? So I might not want to take the full, how it's currently doing. I may want to take a little of my initial projection, right?
Exactly. And that's where the definition of the weights are. Exactly. So in my example here, I was taking 100% of my actuals for this particular offer. But you can, if you don't want to make that full swift and say increase a category by 5%, I can say, take that 100 out of column 2 and say, give me 50-50. Give me a 50-50 split weight from my initial forecast versus how they're actually performing, and apply that to my work.
And then you could just type in here. So whatever you make the adjustment, you could fine tune it, right?
Mm-hmm. Right. Anything, yep, you certainly can. So the other great thing about this particular screen is it does allow you to access curve analysis, and Linda will be talking about that a bit more in depth, but you have the ability to drill down. So let's say we don't necessarily want to make a tops down big change. I've got 4 categories that are behaving very differently than I thought. The customers are purchasing much differently. So I can actually isolate down to those particular areas. So as you said, Stuart, I could just decide to say, okay, dressing for work, nobody's going to work, they're in their pajamas. I could manually key in and say $400,000 there if I want to, and then save, and it'll remix my percent totals. But I also might want to go down to drill into that dressing for work category and take a look at the subcategories that are a part of that to see, is there any particular subcategory that's really driving that? So I can do tweaking at any of these different levels. The further that I drill down, the more access I have to different screens. So you'll see it's grayed out in the ribbon right now, but product level forecasting and mix percent. So if I start drilling down into the subcategory, it then shows me my products. I could click to product level forecasting and take a look at the items that are in that offer. Or I could even take a look and see what mix percents, maybe there's something skewing in that area. So you have the option to go to that level of detail. Most is typically looking at the offered category and or subcategories here. So here's just a view of where I've gone ahead and drilled down into my category. So now this is showing me all of my subcategories. And in this particular, I'm looking at my actuals versus my current work version. So again, I could decide to apply those weights to adjust my worked version to match how the customer is truly selling. That's always your option. You don't have to. But again, this is a great screen to do that in. And if you find yourself drilling down and you're making adjustments and you need to get back up to a previous layer, you just hit that previous folder and it's going to bring you up to the next layer above it.
You I didn't mean to rush you.
No, no, I'm fine. I'm fine. No, so it is actually, it's a great screen. I've worked with a few clients recently on it to get them more comfortable with it and starting to use it. So if you've got any questions at all, by all means, reach out to one of us and we'll certainly work with you on it. And with that, I'm going to pass it on over to Linda.
Thanks, Janine. So as Megan mentioned earlier, shipping delays are continuing to impact our product availability, whether they're transportation, whether they're manufacturing. So in some cases, backorder is not an option for some clients, or even backorder may not be an option at a product level. So if the product's shipping late, your company's out of stock, that can impact what your forecasts are going to be, obviously, but it can also impact projections. And so a tool that we have that's available to us is called product availability. This feature is available within the MAPS module. It's also available within the product level forecasting. And so a benefit when you're using product availability is that if you have instances where maybe the product is selling but it misses the first 4 weeks of the offer, typically what you would see is your projection is going to be understated because you didn't have any sales in those first 4 weeks. Well, when you go in and you label a product as unavailable, it will, the projection calculation will identify the fact that that product was supposed to be unavailable during that period, ignore those first 4 weeks where the sales were zero, and create a projection that's going to be more in line with how you're selling for the rest of the offer. So how do we use product availability? So again, whether you're in MAPS, whether you're in product level forecasting, you can click the little hyperlink under availability and it'll drill you into the product availability screen. And in the inset to the right, you can see that we've got a couple of instances where some products are labeled as available, some are partial because somebody has gone in and identified some weeks within there. But once you drill into the slide, you're going to get a calendar that is going to show you and give you the option to go in and pick your weeks. And so on that calendar, you can, with your mouse, click on a particular week. You can use the shift option to be able to click multiple weeks. But what you're doing is you're basically identifying the weeks that the product isn't going to be available. So in this case, we had something where we were expecting to receive the product in July. We've identified that last week of July, August, September, into the first week of October, and we're telling the system that this product is going to be unavailable at this point in time. Once you identify your weeks, you can click Save. And also on this screen, there's an Offer tab, and it allows you to go in and see a listing of all the places where this particular product load or product code is available. But you can see now, here's the impact of the changes that you just made. And so we're identifying by offer where we're going to have partial availability, but you can see that there's also one we've highlighted here where it's completely saying it's now unavailable. There's going to be nothing for sale. So this would be an example where you probably want to work with your merchant or somebody and see if you can find a substitution or some alternative to address that product.
Linda, just to clarify, if there are sales during that week, it's still going to show, right?
Yes.
It's mostly future, right?
Yep. If there are, this is future, but it'll also look at where you've had weeks with zero sales.
Okay.
So, and that's where, if you've got back order as an option, you're going to be taking sales. So, you know, in this piece, product availability may not be an option for you if back order is available. But we have many clients where back order is not an option any longer. So,
right. Okay.
But the key is, once you identify that, we will exclude those weeks when we calculate that new projection. So this is great for those clients where products in this, like this example where we've got many offers. You know, if you were to go in and take and do the analysis to recalc forecasts or adjust curves, that would be a lot of work. So this is a real quick and easy way to be able to impact many offers at one time. So another option that if you have availability issues or if the selling pattern is going to be different for whatever reason is, you can go in and drill in from product level forecasting. You can also drill in, as Janine mentioned, from the multi-offer forecasting screen into our curve analysis window. And so this window allows you to take a peek and see what are your actual sales in comparison to the current demand curve that you had forecast. And so we've highlighted here where we can see we've got a couple of weeks where the selling pattern was very different than what we were expecting it to be. And so you may say, I want to go in and modify my curve because that's going to impact how the remainder of this offer is going to sell. And so to do that, you would click from the curve analysis window into your product curve. And when you do, you have the option in that screen where Stuart is pointing that you can apply a factor. So in this particular example, maybe we have a product code where the sales pattern was different, but we've added some sort of a secondary promotion, and we want to be able to modify the curve just for this one particular product code to identify that the additional sales that are going to happen with that promotion. And so you can go in and apply a factor to the curve. And it's just as easy as saying, I expect the week to be 5 times, 6 times, and you just apply that factor. If you apply a factor and when you hit save, in that lower left inset, you can see then that once we save it, it's going to be highlighted in green and there'll be a D there. So you know that you've applied a demand factor to that particular offer and your curve has changed. Now, how do you identify if you've made these changes within the product level forecasting screen? You will notice that your product curve, there will be an asterisk after it, saying that, hey, this curve has been modified from what the original curve was. Or you can also go to the FMKT product curve screen and you could see a listing of all the places where you may have changed those curves. So that's one easy way where you can go in and change these. But another, option too is you can just go in and create a separate curve and apply it to that product, or if there's going to be multiple products. But this is just an option to be able to change one curve for a particular offer. So Janine also mentioned in her conversation that you can apply another curve where you may want to change a curve at a category level or a subcategory level. And some great examples may be in this where you may have certain businesses where the selling pattern of that business is going to vary from the catalog. Jewelry and toys are great examples where if you've got offers that are going to extend beyond the Christmas or fourth quarter selling period, those gift giving categories, jewelry and toys, may die off at Christmas. And so you want to assign a separate curve to those categories. And so in this instance on the screen, you would go to the demand curve screen. You could select another product curve and apply it. And when you save it, you can swap those two curves out and it will change it for you. And then your adjusted actuals will display using that new curve, and you can see if that better fits what your actual selling pattern would be. So, and with that, I'm going to turn it back to Megan, who's going to talk about offer setup.
All right, thanks, Linda. So with the offer setup screen within marketing, it is important that you continue to review and keep this screen up to date, as well as just be aware of what those settings are, especially when it comes to your publishing and production setup. A critical element to ensure that your forecast accuracy is up to date is keeping those macros updated, both pre-season and post-season, since those are what is driving the calculations for your forecast metrics. And then also, we recommend that you review the Proj Pub tab, reviewing your auto projections, your publishing information, and being aware of what you have set up at the various product or SKU level. When it comes to the product level, we recommend setting that up no more than 10% at the max. We even have some clients as low as 5%, something worth considering depending on your business and how things are faring for you. But then also being aware of what you have set up for your auto projections and when those are going to start to kick in for master scheduling. So something around the threshold of 30% is pretty standard and what we recommend to a lot of our clients. But again, this could vary by whatever time of year or season that you're dealing with. So something to review throughout the seasons as you are looking at your projections. And then the same thing goes along with the publishing as well. So being aware of when you have your versions and your publishing set up, just so all of that data isn't efficiently fed back into master scheduling.
And Megan, at a SKU level, we usually set these higher, right? Because in products, you could have your projections early, depending on sales. But if you have a lot of SKUs, it's possible there's a certain color size that doesn't sell. So you may want to use the original forecast, which is what this will do. So until you're at 40%, it'll use your original forecast. Once you hit 40, it'll use actual sales to project. Again, that's a business decision.
Yep, good call out.
All right, Linda.
Yeah, so another question. So another question we've asked a little bit is, how can we quickly modify what we're purchasing and have it impact a larger category of product? And so one option that we have is, with our suggested purchase order, you can modify your coverage settings pretty quickly. So if you suddenly think, I need to purchase, products are selling well, I need to go out and purchase some additional week, you can modify that coverage setting for our F21 clients and Venture 21 clients. And you can change that. If possibly you're usually covering 8 weeks, you could change it to 12. Or you can say, I want to cover the entire planning horizon. So you buy the rest of the season and possibly try to bring it in earlier. So that's a quick option. You could also look at using safety stock. And so whether you would go into materials planning and set safety stock at a product or SKU level, you could also go to the administration module, your warehouse default screen, and you could modify your safety stock settings at a category or a subcategory level, and then change them back eventually. So those are some real quick and easy ways that you can modify the amount that you are purchasing.
And I'll talk about venture forecasting. For customers that have venture, you would run the forecast variance reports. You could either run it in DRS or within venture itself. There's a DRS module that's down here on the bottom. So there's a number of different options. You could look at forecast variance of, I believe it's 1 week, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 8 weeks, or even longer. And what this is going to do is we store those forecasts. And so we look at the forecast for those weeks and the actual, and we look at the variance. We have a estimate, which is mean average percent error. That's the difference between your forecast and actuals. And here you have retail variance. So you could bring in this report, sort on retail variance, and take a look and say, well, my forecast was 108, but it's really coming in at 84. And so those are the products that you want to look at. You could then click and go to the forecast graph. Visually, you could be able to see different options here. This is the legends. We may want to see, well, we definitely want to see sales, but we may want to see inventory as well. So you could have here where your sales are up high as you have the inventory, but then if the inventory drops off, your sales might drop off. These examples from our sample dashboard are not the best, but that's the basic idea, is that you take a look at your forecast, your past history, you take a look at your future forecast, and you're on hand. So here you see in the history graph, you can see your history from prior years, your current forecast that you have, and you could either update your future forecasts in forecast adjustments, which is a separate window, or you could change the forecast method. Maybe you don't want to use expert. Maybe you just want to take a look at the last couple of weeks. Here you can see the sales dropped off the last couple of weeks, so you might not want to have the spike that's going here. So again, look first at the reports for forecast variance, and then go to the different forecast graph. And with that, I'm going to go into a dashboard to review some of these screens. So in forecasting, we have product variance. That's also what we call a data element. I don't know if I have it set up here, but that is an element that you could set up to see your variance report, or just click on it here. It opens automatically. It will show you different information up here. See this audit ID? This will show you the different audit IDs. If you have a script running, it's going to run every day and see if it finds records. So you could see it'll find certain number of these records. And these are the records that satisfy whatever specs you put in for the job in your script, basically. So you see here, we had 220 when it was run before, and now we have 720. You could go in and do different filters here, looking at category or subcategory or vendor. If I click submit job, this will usually copy what you have set up as a script. So here it's saying, run it at 5%, stop running it when the offer is at 40%, and this is by offer. So your offers may have different setups, and show me variance of up to 25%. So you don't want this report to show everything. You really wouldn't have time to go through, but this will show me this larger percent. If I wanted, I could go in and change this, make changes, and hit submit. And what'll happen then is it'll show me a new audit ID. See here? Now I have an audit ID of 35. This is where you could go in and again, go to submit jobs. We spoke about maybe changing this variance percent. And again, run it to see more information. Down here, you could see the detail. You could sort by these columns. You could also group. So if I wanted to group by offer, you have different offers here. So these are the different offers that satisfy the filter that we put in. This offer is at 10% done. This offer is at 19% done. You could group by category, vendor, anything. You just drag up here to do the grouping, and then you could go in and pick out the individual. But I'm going to go in here and look at under units. So this is telling me, here's my forecast units, here's my projected, and here's my under. So in the example we have, which is a good example, here my forecast was 430, my projected is 758. So I need to take a look at this item. You can double click or right click, and it'll take you into product level forecast. So here it highlights the offers. You see there were two offers that we had, where we had that we came from product variance. Here it's saying 430 and projection of 756. So the question is, why is this different? Now there are different things you could look at. If I expand this, I could take a look and look at my actual sales and my weighted price. So our planned price was $10.99, but the actual weighted price is $8.55. At some point, there may be some markdowns going on. Could be a web discount. It could actually be a wholesale offer or unusual demand. You could go into forecasting and run unusual demand for this to see maybe there's someone that got a large amount of these at a discounted level. You may have comments in here to put to say this could be on web sale, but this basically, you go in there and start evaluating and analyzing. You may not want to change it to 758. You may want to go somewhere in the middle. But again, the analysis that you do, how you know your business, the more you can find out, that's how you make this change. And as we mentioned, you could go to this history forecast graph. Our sample dashboard does not have good information, really sample information, but you'd be able to see, here's the current week. You'd be able to see your sales history and then your sales forecast and your on-hand information. You could go in here, year after year, click the save and then see 3 years, which will show you sales and inventory, or trend, go back and then see the trend. So a lot of times we've seen, here you have your forecast going along, all of a sudden the forecast drops. Why? Because your inventory dropped at the same time. So in PLF, this is a good one to take a look at to see, especially where you see something funky going on, it may be due to your inventory. And this is where you could see that inventory that's there in that history forecast graph. Here we could look at the demand curve. So this is a particular curve that's associated with it. I could just go in here and change it. This one is for a particular offer category, or I could go into curve analysis. So when I go to curve analysis, I could see my demand, I could see my adjusted actuals, and I could see my demand curve. If I wanted, I could go in, like Linda showed at a category level, you could go in at a product level and swap out the curve, or you could go here to product curve. So here we spoke about going in to applying a factor. If you click adjust units, let's say here, I change this factor and I hit normalize, it'll go in, adjust the curve and adjust the units. But you have the choice. You may want to go in and just change the units in PLF or somewhere else and make that adjustment and just change the curve. This one does it in both places. So I could go in there and save and then exit, and here you could see indicates factor applied. So you could see D for the demand, I applied this factor to my new curve, okay? And you could go in here and see a graph. It'll show you the curve, the actuals, and adjusted actuals. So that's one way to make the change here, or you could swap out that demand curve. When we speak about availability, I don't have a good example because in our sample dashboard, it's mostly older information, but you could do a first available date. It'll bring up a calendar, or a last available date, or you could just highlight here. So if we could say, go in here and highlight and say, well, it's not going to be available for these. And you could use the shift key to do this and then do save. And then it'll tell you that it's not available. It takes a little bit of processing, so I don't want to do it now. But here, when you go to offers, it'll show you for this product, whether it's available or unavailable for those different offers. And then if it's unavailable, those forecasts will not flow in. So it's good, especially if you have a large number of offers to do. As we said, we came from the product variance screen, so I could use the previous and next. That'll take me to the next one from product variance, and I can review it. I'm going to go into multi-offer forecast. You could bring in, as Janine said, you could bring in different versions. If you want to make a change, make sure that the right column has your Word version, because the right column is the only place you can make changes in. So here I might want to look at projected. If I had last year, I could bring it in. I don't have a good last year for this offer, but I can bring in my initial projection and then hit retrieve. And you see I could look at revenue. I could look at revenue price. It'll show the average price for these. So here I could see, I see the percent complete. I see at the top level, I could go in and make a change here and save it down. I could drill down to the different categories. So if I'm here, I could then go in. So if you wanted to change a curve at this level, you would go to curve analysis. Okay, and you could go in here and you could change to a different curve. And if this curve is better, you could go into view, swap the curve. We ask, you sure you want to make it active? And then you could save it. Again, you could go in there and look at the graph. This will actually show you the different curves, the ones, the actual, adjusted, the original curve you had assigned, and the new curve, just to see what's better than that. And then you could hit that save. And you could go to the home screen. Like I said, you could double click and make a change here, or you could go to apply weights. So if I wanted to, I could go to edit and apply weights, and I could go in and basically make whatever changes are here. And you can see it better in revenue with that mixed percent. So we would go in and apply those weights. Here I have it 80-20, so it'll take 80% here. And so I would apply weights, I would save. System's gonna ask, do you wanna do a scaled save or do you wanna do a weighted save? Scaled save will take it scaled down to the product level. Weighted will take you down to a SKU level. So you'd want to see whether you want to go down to a product or a SKU level. All right, with that, I'm going to go back to the presentation. Does anyone have any questions?
We've had nothing come through yet. So
Okay.
if anybody has any questions, go ahead and put them in the Q&A window now.
And you could always email us afterwards. So.
Yeah.
Let's wait a bit and see if we have any questions. All right, let's go to the next slide. Megan?
Sure. All right, so for next month's webinar, we are planning to review how to best manage the interfaces back into our system. So that is scheduled for October 28th at 3 p.m. Eastern, and we'll be sure to send you out an invite and registration link closer to the time. And that is pretty much it. So it looks like nothing else came through in terms of questions. So with that, then we'll just wrap up today's session. Thanks again for spending time to be with us. I hope you found this session valuable, and we hope you have a great rest of your day and stay healthy and safe. Thank you.